Welcome to the Worldshapers, conversations with authors about their latest books. I'm your host, Edward Willett, and this episode's guest, Brad C. Anderson, talking about his new science fiction novel, Ashme's Song. Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Worldshapers, the podcast where I talk to authors about their latest books. My name is Edward Willett. I am myself an author, although right now The Worldshapers is focused on the other side of what I do, which is publishing. My last few guests, and going forward, several more guests will be authors that I have published here at Shadowpaw Press, Shadowpaw Press. Technically, the laptop I am currently speaking into is the Shadowpaw Press. All the rest of the stuff, it really has nothing to do with Shadowpaw Press behind me. Everything is on the laptop. It's just me and the cat, and he's no help, as I often say. Anyway, yes, this is the podcast where I talk to authors about their latest books. And I just mentioned Shadowpaw Press, so perhaps I should mention it some more. Shadowpaw Press is a small traditional publishing company. I publish a lot of different authors. Science fiction and fantasy will always have pride of place because I write science fiction and fantasy, but I also have had literary books, poetry books, a picture book, nonfiction, and there's more of that coming up as well. My own writing, I haven't had anything too recent. My last novel release was The Tangled Stars from Daw Book in 2022, I guess now, fall of 2022. It's a outer space adventure featuring an AI uplifted talking cat who becomes a starship captain. It's available in ebook and audiobook, and I hope that you will check that out. I will have a new novel coming out in 2025, Fireboy, which is a middle grade, young adult fantasy novel. And I'll be talking about that more going forward, I'm sure. Whatever I do with this podcast, I'm still not quite sure. It won't go away. It may mutate a bit, but it will continue, and I will continue to talk to at least some authors about their books. So that brings us to this episode, and today's guest is a recurring guest, Brad C. Anderson. Before I introduce him, I should mention that Brad's book, Ashme's Song, and two others, Ibrax, A Battle Divine, A Dragon Assassin Adventure by Arthur Slade, who I talked to 2 weeks ago, as you watch this, and James Bowe, who wrote The Sunrunners. Those three books, The Sunrunners, Ibrax, and Ashme's Song we're talking about today, are all currently being supported by a Kickstarter through Shadowpaw Press. If you go to shadowpawpress.com, you can find a link to that Kickstarter. It has funded at the $1,500 Canadian level that I set it at. So everything that goes in there now is gravy. And it's a great opportunity to get copies of the books, other copies of other books, and also to, if you like, to have an online chat with the authors. That's a higher level reward. They're wide open. So please check that out as well. If you enjoy any of the conversations I've had with these authors over the last 3 weeks, you could have your own conversation with them. Okay, and speaking of conversations, let's get to Brad. I will have to put on my reading glasses to read his bio here, even though it's on the screen. Brad C. Anderson lives with his wife and puppy in Vancouver, Canada. He teaches undergraduate business courses at a local university and researches organizational wisdom in blithe defiance of the fact most people do not think you can put those two words in the same sentence without irony. Previously, he worked in the biotech sector where he made drugs for a living, legally. His stories have appeared in a variety of publications. His short story, Naive Gods, was longlisted for a 2017 Sunburst Award for Excellence in Canadian Literature of the Fantastic. It was published in the anthology Lazarus Risen, which was itself nominated for an Aurora Award. And Brad's previous book, Duotero, was originally published by Bundoran Press, and Shadowpaw Press Reprise brought out a new edition of it a few months ago. So let's talk to Brad Anderson now. So, Brad, welcome back to the Worldshapers.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
I had you on in the previous version, the pre-video era of the Worldshapers, where we talked about Duotero, which, of course, was a reprinted novel that my Shadowpaw Press brought out. Yeah. But now you've got a brand new one coming out, also from Shadowpaw Press. And so that's what we're going to talk about. Do you say Ashme? Ashme?
That's how I pronounce it, Ashme song. Ashme song. I always love like once you publish it, you see how everybody else, you see how it's actually supposed to be pronounced when everybody else starts pronouncing it.
Well, I only see two possibilities. It's either Ashme's song or Ashma's song. So I think
Oh,
most people will
okay.
probably go with Ashme, but I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, yeah, I know. Yeah.
But before we get to the new book, let's talk about you.
Oh,
Tell me again, as you did last time we talked, but different listeners. Uh, Tell me a bit about yourself and how you got started writing and science fiction writing in particular.
Sure thing. By day, I'm a university prof. By night, I write for fun. I do other things at night for fun as well. But I teach business. I'm the chair of the entrepreneurial leadership department at a local university out here in Vancouver, rainy Vancouver. Started my life in the sciences. I was originally a science guy. I made drugs for a living for about 10 years or so before I joined the dark side and got into business education. And I've been writing ever since I was a kid. I don't know. That just seemed to be how I expressed myself. Always wanted to tell stories. Wrote little short stories as a kid. Those short stories got longer the older I got. Here I am in my mid 50s writing novels. I don't know how long they'll be when I'm 70, but there we go. Just writing's always been a part of my life. And sci-fi, I don't know, it's funny. Whenever I write short stories, they tend to be more fantastical and fantasy. I know they have fantasy elements. Whenever I write long stories, they tend to be sci-fi, and I don't know what's going on in my brain to make that happen, but that seems to be what happens. So, yeah, think of that what you will.
Did you were you drawn to it as a young reader, as like most of us were? That's how most of us got interested in science fiction and fantasy.
Yeah, pretty much. I always read sci-fi. I always read sci-fi and fantasy, like anything, like anything that wasn't real life, anything that wasn't like a depiction of the world today. I always read sci-fi, fantasy, anything with an imaginative, not real element to it. Always drawn to that. I probably would. I don't know. Like it's like nature versus nurture. I don't know. Like I'd probably blame my father for that a little bit. He introduced me to Star Wars when I was like 6 years old. He took me to the theater, and I think he's always like that. And somehow I got into that as well. So yeah, I don't know if that's nature or nurture or both, but always.
I'm not sure where I started. I think I had two older brothers who kind of read it, and I'm a little older than you. My memory of going to the movie theater and seeing something science fiction-y was Fantastic Voyage, of all things.
No way.
I don't know if you've ever seen that one with Raquel Welch, based on Isaac Asimov.
Wait, is that where they went small and then
they shrink the submarine and inject it into a guy's body to try to clear a blood clot because he's very important to the Cold War, because that's the era that was in. So that was my introduction, I think.
That's cool.
Even before I was much of a reader, I still have a very clear memory. And also it's because it was my big brother that actually deigned to take me to He was like 12 years older than me, so it's a big deal if he took me to a movie when I was
very cool. Yeah.
Anyway, so you got interested in that. You started writing. You've had a few short stories. Was Duotero your first novel?
Well, I always joke. I self-published a trilogy before that, but I always kind of tell people that was my practice books. Like I didn't know what I was doing when I wrote those, and so I would like to believe I'm better at it now than I was back then. But Duotero was the first one that was good enough that somebody else thought it was worth reading and publishing. So I was that for an answer.
It was Bundoran Press that published it first, Hayden King Holmes Publishing Company, and then I was pleased to bring it out in the new edition. There's one thing that connects the two, and that's the cover art. They're both by Dan O'Driscoll and a Roar Award-winning artist.
I know. I love his art. So, I was so happy.
Pulled up the book, but we don't have it yet.
I know, right? Like imagine me holding an awesome book right now. Yeah, I know. I was so happy when you got Dan to do the cover art. Like, I love his work. He did great work on Duotero. I was like thrilled when you told me that he was going to do it for this one as well. I was like, oh, yes, that's awesome.
Well, we should talk about Ashme's song, not
Sure.
just the cover art, but
Yeah.
what's inside the book. So
There's more. There's words inside.
there's words and everything. Yeah, quite a few pages.
Yeah.
And we both read every one of them. So
lots of times.
Where did it come from? Well, first of all, describe the book, what it's about, and then we can talk about where it came from and how it developed.
Absolutely, yeah. So Ashme's song, it takes place in the future on a world called Ashara, and it looks at looks at a civilization that's oppressed and is on the verge of civil war and revolt. And the main character is Ashme and her brother Shen, and it kind of looks at them experiencing this this violence of their society, this collapse of order of their society. And it really explores sort of themes like, what does it mean to be a hero? Like, Ashme is really torn between, like, she wants to fight for her country, she wants to fight for her people. Like, somebody's got to fight for her people, why not her? But then she also has to take care of her brother. Her brother has special needs, and she's sort of the only caretaker for him. So she's really sort of, it explores this theme of, what does it mean to be a hero? Is a hero somebody who fights for their people, fights for their country, or is a hero somebody who takes their family and gets the heck out of Dodge and tries to keep their family safe? So sort of.
And of course, Ashme has a special ability.
Yes. Yeah. So the history, sci-fi, the history of this world is, way back in the history of this world, AI became sentient, and they, whenever AI becomes sentient in this world, it's a dangerous thing for people, because people become as important to these AIs as ants are to us, and so these sentient AI are they're kind of unfathomable to us. They do things that might catabolize a whole city to create a structure and then fly off to another star. And so in the big history of this world, this history was marked by the rise of these sentient AI, and they left their mark, and then they left the world for reasons that humans can understand. But one of the things that happened as the sentient were leaving the world is they created these groups of people called, they're called indigo children. That's what people call them in this world. And they have this ability, these indigo children have this ability to impact technology at a distance. The world, the sentient covered this world in what we call the nano haze. So it's just these nanobots kind of just in the air all around everything. And these indigo children have the ability to manipulate that nano haze to have an impact on technological tools, computers, robots at a distance. And Ashme happens to be one of those. So she feels like she actually has something to offer and she does. She actually does have the skill, gives her something to offer, the rebels and the revolutionaries who are trying to change the order and free their people. That kind of just adds a little bit, like she actually has some skills. And so she does feel this responsibility, and I don't know. She's young. I don't know if responsibility is the right word. It's like, just this adventure, she wants to be a hero. She wants to be a hero like her dad was. She has the skill to offer. But should she be taking care of her brother? Yeah.
Yeah. And the brother is an interesting character too. It's not common to see someone like Shen in a science fiction adventure. Why did you decide to go that route? What interested you in having that character?
Yeah. So I wanted, right. So Shen is, he's a special needs character. He has, like mental and physical challenges, that really prevent him from being self-sufficient. Like, he needs a caretaker. And Shen and Ashme are twins. They're the same age, but let's say he has these problems and does need somebody to look after him. And that falls to his sister, Ashme. And so, what inspired me to do that? A couple of things. One, it fit the needs of the story. Like, I wanted a character who felt this tension between looking after her family and looking after, and sort of joining, the cause and fighting. There's a couple of ways you can create that dependency. One is it could be a small child, but that's been done a lot. So I wanted to try to do something new. I think, special needs people should be in stories too. They have, they're part of the world. And then, it also, but by doing that, by sort of choosing that Shen was a special needs character in a science fiction setting, I think oftentimes why you don't see them in science fiction settings is because in science fiction, we've solved all of these problems there. And sort of begs the question, like, so society has gotten to this point where they can create sentient AI, they can travel between stars. Why have we not solved this issue of people with physical and mental handicaps and challenges? And it got that actually opens up a door to explore again sort of mechanisms of mechanisms of power, mechanisms of oppression. Why isn't he? And sort of built in a reason in the story for why that is, that kind of ties to this theme, ties to some of the themes that we have going on there. So all in all, it just, I wanted to have that dynamic between Ashme and this other person in her family. I wanted to have that dynamic, and just fit all sorts of other themes in the story and things that I wanted to explore myself. So So and thus Shen was born.
And we should mention then that on the other side of this equation in this particular world is the other main character, who interestingly also has a child with special needs. So you do see this, and their take on what's happening is quite different from the one from Ashme's side of things. And
absolutely,
I think that's very interesting that they're you're not just seeing it from the one viewpoint, but you're also seeing it from the other side of things. And his wife in particular, that character's Mason is the character, and his wife in particular has very good reasons to hate the people on the other side of the equation as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. That's something that I really wanted to explore as well. So the story, the titular character is Ashme in Ashme's song, and she is a member of this group of people that have been conquered in the past, and they're sort of living under this oppressive regime. But the other character in the story is Mason, who's actually a member of this oppressive regime. And so we get to see the story, we get to see the world, we get to explore the world through Mason's eyes as well as through Ashme's eyes. So we sort of see these two sides there. You can, through doing that, like you mentioned, you can start to see the perspective of the people in power and what's driving them. And a lot of it is fear. They're afraid of this underclass. They're afraid of the violence and the threat that they possess, which causes them to clamp down harder, which increases the risk of violence more. So you sort of see that dynamic in play. But Mason and his wife Oriana is she's just a regular citizen. Oriana is just a regular citizen, and you get to see that fear that she has. And then, his child, as it turns out, they've just had a baby, and his child also has, a genetic defect that's causing some severe health problems. But you get to sort of see a different dynamic. Mason is obviously in a very privileged position. They're a part of the upper, the stronger group, the dominant group, the privileged group. And his child's trajectory takes a very different path from Ashme's brother Shen, who is on the oppressed group, the undergroup, the group that's being crushed and trying to rise up. I wanted to kind of I wanted to explore that. In Canada, in Canada and the world, we have these dynamics where we have sort of an oppressive society and a repressed society. And just exploring the dynamics, seeing how that plays out, seeing the experiences of the different people on the different sides and how that interacts and creates the world that we see. So, yeah.
And then the other part of your science fiction background is, of course, this is an interstellar society. And so you have kind of wild cards in the form of these, you call them arcs, giant spaceships, I guess, is the best way to describe them. So that's another layer that then adds that additional science fictional element to this.
So when you're writing a science fiction when you're writing sci-fi, you get to make all sorts of choices. Like, do we have light speed? Are we on other worlds and stuff like that? And so the choice I made was that, we are on other worlds, but light speed is impossible. Like, we haven't achieved light speed. And so what's evolved over time is, these arc ships are basically these large trading ships. They're sort of these large generational trading ships that just fly between planets or fly between ports. So, between interstellar planets, there might be some interstellar ports, and these arc ships, they're just traders. They go back and forth and trade. And these arc ships have a lot of they have a lot of technology. They got the best technology because they're trading all the time. They're seeing, they're getting the best from all the worlds that they go to and stuff like that. And so these arc ships are particularly, let's say they have technological advantages, they have wealth, and so they have this major influence on these planetary systems. And the world of the story, there is one arc ship that kind of has a monopoly with this one planet. And the monopoly is really focused through this oppressive group on this one planet. And there is a threat of that monopoly being broken. New arc ships are coming to the system. So you have this. So there's a lot of political danger. There's a lot of political danger on this planet. So from the perspective of the people who are kind of being crushed by these invaders, there is a risk of revolution. These invaders have this power structure in place with this one arc that has this monopoly, but that monopoly is under threat. New arcs are coming in, so there's this sort of ever increasing risk of war and conflict starting to spiral out of control. That's happening at the time of the story.
Yeah, there's a lot going on and a lot of complexity that I think readers will respond to well.
Yeah.
How long was the writing process for you? Because I actually saw you say something somewhere about 8 years working on this book.
Yeah. It's funny. Yeah, just as we were wrapping up all the final edits on it and stuff like that, I just let's take a walk down memory lane and have a look at my notes. And I'm like looking at the first file, and it's like 2016. It's like, holy crap! I've been working on this since 2016. It hasn't been a full-time job since 2016, but yeah, 2016 is kind of when it first started, when I really first got serious about, working it out and putting pen to paper. So yeah, it's been, what is that? That's like an 8-year odyssey. It was almost 8 years to the date. The first file was like November the 8th, 2016. And then I was looking at it at like November the 18th. So it's like, wow, it's like almost 8 years, almost like within 1 or 2 weeks. So yeah, quite a journey, quite an odyssey getting that book written.
I think we talked about your writing process last time you were on, but how do you work? Was it bang the whole thing out in one
slowly? Yeah, slowly. I remember talking about this the last time because I was so jealous because you're like, I wrote a book in a month, and I'm like, oh man, I wrote a book in a decade.
Not recently, but I have done it. Yeah. My writing process is slow. I find. I think part of it is because I do work full time, and so I just sort of squeeze the writing. I use that as my excuse. If I was a full-time writer, I could do it faster. I don't know. But it is a slow process. So I spend a lot of time at the start. I have the idea. I spend a lot of time fleshing the idea out. I generally write standalone novels, and one of the costs of a standalone novel is that you have to do a whole bunch of world building every time you write a new book. So at the start, I often it usually takes a couple of months for me to flesh out the story, and I need to do a first run of the world building so that I kind of have a sense of the setting that the story's in. Then I write the draft. For me, the first draft takes like approximately forever. Like that's the thing. That's the time sink. Like that. I'm just slow at it. That's the hardest part for me. The first draft usually takes a couple of years. Don't want to say it, but it's true. Usually takes a couple of years. Once I have a first draft done, then I can, once I have something, then I can go quicker. I do a lot of edits, so my first draft is really rough and horrible, and all the things authors say about their first draft is true for me, how bad it is. So I go through a lot of rounds of editing, but I find once I have something there, I can go, it's fun. Once I have something there, it's fun. I can fly through it quickly.
but yeah, that first draft usually takes years, and then making it pretty after I have my first draft might take another year or two of edits that I just do in my evening. And then comes the process of trying to sell it and get somebody to pick it up. And that can take a long time.
Do you have beta readers of any sort or anything like that?
Yeah,
I always ask that. I never have, but I know people do.
Yeah, I don't trust myself. I do have a couple of people that I like to work with. There's Sarah Johnson, and she's based out of Calgary, and she works with the Alexandra Writing Society in Calgary. I got introduced to them years ago.
I was just going to say, they now run When Words Collide, which is a wonderful writing conference you should come to next year.
I should, because I actually had that connection with them for so long. So yeah, I usually get her to like she has often been the first reader of most of my stories, and she focuses a lot on she doesn't do the fine-tune editing, but she'll look at story like can she actually understand this? Like, does this make sense? So she'll be like the first reader. She'll look at story, character, just sort of is this thing actually pulling together? I'll get some edits from her. And then another person who I really like working with as well. Her name is Audrey Laycraft, and she's pretty hard.
She's been a guest on the podcast, so I know her very well.
Yeah. She's done writing, she's done editing. She does just some intense editing, and looks at the story, looks at the character with a fine-tooth comb. So that's kind of the fine-tooth comb reader that I work with. And then after that, those are usually the two people that get to see my work before it goes out usually. And then I start, after that, make some changes and edits. And then I try to let it loose on the world, see if it's got legs.
And then I got to edit it too.
So. And then you got to edit it, and then you got to read it, and then you got to edit it. Yeah, I know. There's so much editing. So much of writing is just editing.
So it comes out on December 17th is the final release date. I had to bump it.
Finally, yeah.
It's actually at the printer right now, so that's exciting when that comes out. But you do have something else coming up, because you're also part of Shapers of Worlds Volume 5, which is the 5th anthology that I've kickstarted featuring guests of this podcast. The last one I'm going to do, and it's coming out in March is when it got bumped to, because the artist is still working on her drawings, and I've edited stories, but I haven't decided what order they're going in. And there's this guy
you're doing just everybody who knows this guy, you're working overtime, you're working crazy. You got 3 novels coming out, you're working on this Worldshapers podcast, like you've got so much going, like I don't know how you do it. You've got like superhuman endurance and passion. That's amazing.
Well, I still have my short story. It's my writing that suffers through all of this. So I'm going to try to pull back on the publishing stuff and get more of my writing going next year. But right now I do have quite a few things going on. It's true. So looking forward to bringing that out as well. You want to say what your story is about? Shapers.
So it's a Cupid 2.0, and it kind of so it's a short story, Cupid 2.0, and the main character is Cupid, and the story is about his trials and tribulations in the world of dating apps, driven by powerful AI algorithms. He's like, can't make people fall in love anymore. They're all addicted to social media and dating apps, and he's like, now what do I do?
And every story is illustrated by Wendy Nordell, and she did yours quite early, and I quite like it with Cupid. He's got the wings, and he's sitting there looking at his laptop, and there's all this scattered fast food containers and things around it. It's very fun illustration.
Yeah, he's kind of like, am I going to be unemployed? Like, what's, just kind of, what's my purpose in life? What's my purpose in life now?
There was a whole anthology put out by Joshua Palmatire's Zombie Needs Brains operation. Yeah. He kickstarts anthologies constantly. And I was in this one. It's called The Modern Deity's Guide to Surviving Humanity. And it was that very idea of having, that story would have fit perfectly in there, of ancient gods who are somehow trying to get by in the modern world. And it would have been a perfect fit for that.
That's funny. But it's all yours. It's all for you. It's all yours. Yeah.
So what are you working on now?
I've more or less just finished the first draft of another novel, which was another, another multi-year process to get that first draft done. So yeah, just this last month, I finished that first draft of another novel. Now begins the editing and trying to make it pretty process of that novel. Try to make it make sense. So that's kind of the big thing that I'm working on. Yeah, that's pretty much the big thing. That's going to consume my time. That has been consuming my time and probably will continue to consume my time for the near future. I always like one of the things I do is I go through lots of rounds of editing, and when I sort of between rounds, I like to space it out. That's where I like to bang out maybe some short stories. That's maybe where I like to get a start on my next novel. I'll start doing that work there between the rounds of editing. So working on that novel that I've just finished is going to be most of my time, but I'm hoping I can sort of squeeze some other little fun projects in there between the different rounds of editing that I do, but that'll keep me out of trouble.
I should also mention before we close off here that this episode will go live on Sunday the 24th, I guess it is. And there is still a Kickstarter running, which will run for a few days after that to help support the publication of Ashme's Song and a couple of other titles, Ibrax by Arthur Slade and The Sunrunners by James Bow. Those two are already out, but the Kickstarter is to help. Because, publishing requires money. Anything that can help is good.
Publishing requires money, but there's not a lot of money in publishing,
or writing, unfortunately.
Or writing, yeah.
This is why, why did I choose this path? I'm not entirely sure, but here I am.
Everyone out there, support indie sci-fi. Follow this guy's Kickstarter. Support indie sci-fi. Support people. Ed's so passionate about this. Like, help him out.
That is a good message to leave people with here.
Yeah.
Where can people find you online, if anywhere?
You can find me at probably the easiest way is bradanderson2000.com. I'm the 2000ths of us. bradanderson2000.com is where you can find me.
Is that why it says? I've always wondered that is if it referred to a year, or why does it say 2000?
I have no idea. It was like way back when I first got like my Gmail thing. That's just the hand. I don't know if it was Gmail. Somewhere I was signing up for like an email thing, and that's just the handle they gave me. And I'm like, I don't know why I got this number, but that's the handle they gave me. And I'm like, I can remember that. And so it's stuck ever since with everything else that I've done. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's like my handles are all over the place because Twitter, I'm eWillett. On Instagram, I'm Edward Willett Author. On Facebook, I'm Edward.Willett. You're supposed to keep them all consistent, and somehow I completely have failed at that.
At least you got some version of Edward and some version of Willett in all of them. At least you got, yeah.
Generally speaking, I manage that. Now, Shadowpaw Press is the same everywhere, and the Worldshapers is the same everywhere. So I finally got the memo, but it took a while. Well, anyway, Brad, thanks so much for being on again, and really looking forward to seeing a physical copy of the book.
I know, right?
It'll arrive here about the same time it arrives with you because it's shipping straight from the printer. So
thank you so much. And I say, everybody, support indie sci-fi. Have a look at this guy's Kickstarter. Help him out. Help us out. Thank you so much. I'm really appreciative of everything you've done.
You're most welcome, and I'm very excited for the book to come out. And thanks to Brad for being on the Worldshapers again. I hope you enjoyed that chat as we talked about Ashme's Song, and I hope you are now perhaps at least somewhat excited, probably not as excited as both of us are, for that book to come out on December 17th from Shadowpaw Press. I've already mentioned at the top and again in the interview, but I'm going to mention it again. There is a Kickstarter running right now to support the publication of Ashme's Song and two other books, Ibrax, A Battle Divine, A Dragon Assassin Adventure by Arthur Slade, and The Sunrunners by James Bow, my previous two guests on this podcast. And if you go to Shadowpaw Press's website, you will be able to find an easy link to that Kickstarter. It has funded, so whatever rewards you choose, you will get, and pretty quickly as well, because two of the books are already out, and Ashme's Song will be out on December 17th. In both ebook and print. So you can find Shadowpaw Press at shadowpawpress.com. It is on Twitter at Shadowpaw Press. It's on Blue Sky at Shadowpaw Press, whatever that is. I don't really know those off the top of my head. But yeah, Shadowpaw Press, the ski app, I guess, is what it looks like. I don't know. If you're on there, you'll know how to find it. And it's on Instagram at Shadowpaw Press and on Facebook, which I may have already said, at Shadowpaw Press. You can find me at edwardwillett.com. You can find me on X/Twitter at ewillett. You can find me on the Blue Sky Place at Edward Willett, I think. You can find me on Instagram at Edward Willett Author. You can find me on Facebook at Edward.Willett. And you can find me on YouTube at Edward Willett, where you may already be if you are watching this video. And please subscribe to my channel so that you get updates whenever there's a new episode of the Worldshapers. And also whenever I go for my walks around Regina. That's a popular thing that I do. Relatively popular. And yeah, in fact, I'll be doing one right after I finish this conversation right now. You can find this podcast, The Worldshapers, at its own website at theworldshapers.com. You can find it on X at The Worldshapers, and you can find it on Facebook at The Worldshapers. And that's it for this episode of The Worldshapers. I thank you for joining me again. As I said, this podcast will continue. I'm just not sure even yet exactly what it's going to look like, except that I will continue to interview my own authors that I am publishing. And there will be a wider variety because my next two books after the science fiction fantasy ones that I've just published, there's a literary novel reprint that's coming out. And that author, Harriet Richards, has a literary collection reprint coming out in the new year. So I'll be talking to her at some point. I also have new work by a very well-known and respected literary author, David Carpenter. That will be out, a collection of short fiction. That's in January. And another collection of literary short fiction by Dwayne Brenna coming out in February. Then there's a nonfiction book by Mark Morton, who I have interviewed as author of The Headmasters, science fiction, YA science fiction. He has a nonfiction book called Cupboard Love, a dictionary of culinary curiosities, which I'm very much looking forward to bringing out in a new edition as well. And there's more stuff down the road. So if you are interested, you can subscribe to Shadowpaw Press's newsletter, again, through the website, shadowpawpress.com. You can also subscribe to my newsletter. Both of those are on Substack. And, of course, you can keep coming back here, and I will be talking about everything related to publishing as I do these interviews. So thanks for watching. Bye for now.